What is going on, everybody? Nathan King here from Auburn Undercover. Welcome on into the Eagle Wakeup. It's been a minute since we've done one of these videos. Maybe I try to do these every game day morning for you guys. Maybe try to bring on a guest. Just talk about Auburn's opponent on Saturday. Some things we'll be looking for. Obviously, we've increased our video content this season. Don't tell Patrick, our video intern, that this one got uploaded because he's been working to the bone this week, and so we'll just go with the straight camera here. But obviously, some news to talk about. Also, no Homer accusations. This is Auburn High School that I'm wearing currently, so we're all good there. But some news to talk about here as I record this on Friday. You guys will be listening to this most likely on Saturday morning, getting ready for Auburn versus New Mexico on homecoming, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2. Hank Brown is going to be Auburn's quarterback in this game, at least at the start of this game. We reported that on Friday. Reports are rolling in. Justin Hokanson from On3 was the first to report it, and then things got kind of confirmed throughout the day. Hugh Freeze had a meeting with Auburn's quarterbacks on Friday, as we understand, sort of going over things from the week. And look, the consensus from this week was they saw enough from Hank Brown to justify giving him a start in this game. We thought over the course of the week, hearing more from Hugh Freeze, I kind of point to Wednesday. If you guys read what we wrote about or saw what Hugh Freeze said at the teleconference on Wednesday, what he said there was that meeting on Monday that he had talked about he was going to have with both quarterbacks, reviewing the film from the Cal game with Hank Brown and with Peyton Thorne individually. He said both guys, were pretty good at it. They knew what they were looking at. But he said it was eye-opening. I'll have to find the exact quote, but he said he learned what he needed to learn. And then at the end of it, he said, I probably won't say any more than that. That was my first indication this week that, okay, you may actually see Hank Brown start in this game. I wondered if this was going to be a game like Auburn against LSU in 2021. Remember when the Georgia State game, TJ Finley came in for Bo Nix. We all sort of knew he was going to play in that next game. We just didn't know in what capacity. Obviously, Bo ends up starting that game. I thought it was going to be that kind of situation where a couple drives for Peyton Thorne to start the game, then Hank Brown. But the more I thought about it, the more I was talking to people today, we mentioned it kind of all throughout the week on our podcast and on our website. What do you really gain from playing Hank Brown against this New Mexico State team, or excuse me, this New Mexico team? Don't want to see New Mexico State again against this New Mexico team if you are not giving him kind of a starting type situation and seeing how he handles that. Now, that is to say, I really do believe we're going to see Peyton Thorne in this game, probably early on. I would be surprised if they give Hank Brown the full starting situation in terms of that quarterback position. But at the same time, I mean, you knew what you had in Peyton Thorne. And that was the point where I think this decision by Hugh Freeze is going to be one that I think sits well with a lot of Auburn fans. Now, nobody is going to bat an eye if he goes out there, looks a little clunky. Peyton Thorne comes in, also, looks fine. And then they go with Thorne next week against Arkansas if Hank Brown doesn't light the world on fire. But I think a lot of people latched onto on Monday when Hugh Freeze said, if this continues from Peyton Thorne, if this performance continues, we're going to need to be go in a different direction. I think a lot of people latched onto that and they said, this is an example of that continuing. The Cal game was an example of that continuing. What else do you really need to see? And that's why, as I sort of stir on this over the course of the day on Friday, makes more and more sense to go ahead and give Hank Brown the nod, let him go in this game. And just kind of see what he's got from a starting perspective rather than going series by series, because we've already seen Peyton Thorne in these types of situations. Now, the devil's advocate side of that is, I know a lot of people say this offense is very similar to last year, and it is. It's obviously the same type of system. This is a different offensive staff with Derek Nix. Obviously, Hugh Freeze having more of a hand in what's going on from a game-to-game basis, even from a play-to-play basis, obviously having more of a role on game days. And so I think that was the first opportunity for them to see Peyton Thorne in this offense, in this type of offense this season. Last year is last year. They said that all throughout the offseason. I bring all of that up to say, even if Hank Brown does well in this game, I'd be surprised if we've seen the last of Peyton Thorne, because you still don't want to just completely cut bait there. Or maybe you do, or maybe Hank Brown goes out and does well enough to kind of blow you away and make you feel good enough for him to move forward into that Arkansas game. Let's talk a little bit about Hank Brown, the type of player that he is. Maybe a little bit of an unknown commodity. Now, ever since he was named the backup, and certainly this week, people have gotten really, really well acquainted with him. But going back a few years, I think it's important to remember this is a guy that Hugh Freeze and Ken Austin, remember that Ken Austin was Freeze's offensive co-OC / quarterback coach at Liberty. This is a guy they've sort of had a blueprint in their minds for years now, for 3.5 years. How are we going to turn this guy into a college football quarterback? Because he was committed to Liberty. He was committed to Liberty when Hugh Freeze was there. Obviously played under Trent Dilfer at Lipscomb Academy in Nashville. Really, really good high school program. Was a fantastic high school quarterback. He had a 3-star rating. If you look at the composite, he's actually rated higher than Peyton Thorne is as a composite recruit. I believe he's rated lower just by the 24/7 Sports rankings. But, that's to say this is not a guy that Hugh Freeze and Ken Austin are just kind of, messing with and figuring out and trying to develop, over the past couple seasons. They've had an idea even going into, they thought before they got the Auburn job, before Freeze got the Auburn job more specifically, they thought he was going to be a guy who was going to have to play at Liberty. Then he comes in at Auburn. The buzz primarily last season came with that Music City Bowl, and that revealed some things. 7 of 9 in that game for $132, gave the offense more juice than it had had all day. Now, the important caveat is, number one, they weren't really running the system that much. They weren't running RPO stuff, straight drop back stuff. Maryland had a lot of backups in the game. But still, Hugh Freeze has said it himself, there is no substitute for confidence. And that kind of put him on people's radar. I was not super surprised when he rose up to that number 2 job this preseason over Holden Geriner. Holden Geriner is a good quarterback with a lot of arm talent. But again, all of those reasons I just talked about of this is the guy that Hugh Freeze and Ken Austin and people in that building have latched onto for a few years now, have been excited to develop. And I think that went to show that he was taking the right steps. How did he win that job? We talked to Hank Brown in the preseason. The first thing he really talked about was he was like, yeah, I graded out really well in the deep ball. And that is something where you saw that against Maryland. You saw that against Alabama A&M with kind of his fearlessness to go down the field. Shoot, if you were at the open practice in Jordan-Hare Stadium in like the second week of August this preseason, you saw that he kind of got the offense buzzing. I mean, think about the parallels you're kind of able to draw here. Peyton Thorne struggled in that first scrimmage. And who was the guy who was kind of able to get things going? Now, this is not my way of saying, oh, he's a better quarterback than Peyton Thorne. Auburn's going to be, way better off with Hank Brown. I'm just saying you can sort of point to these things and realize in the coaching staff, in their brain, how he has developed even just since last season, since we last saw him on the field with a major role against Maryland, how he has sort of developed. A good athlete, a guy who can move through the pocket really well. That was something, though, that Hugh Freeze admitted made it difficult for him, or was going to make the decision difficult. One of a ton of different facets was that Peyton Thorne has more mobility. That brings me to another point. What does this system look like? How can Auburn help Hank Brown as the quarterback? I think the system may look a little bit different. You might see a little bit more straight drop back stuff for Hank Brown. Number one, because he doesn't have as much experience running that RPO with this first team offense. The RPO, as we have come to learn from Hugh Freeze, is about timing. It's about the quarterback making great decisions at the line of scrimmage. It's about the receivers having a great rapport with the quarterback. All of those things were sort of amalgamated last season and this season too against Cal. For a lot of people to say, including myself, like, this looks hard. It is a high degree of difficulty to run that RPO system. I don't know if you want to throw Hank Brown into that right away. Now, it is still the basis of their offense. Is he going to run it? Absolutely. But expect, if you're watching the game on Saturday, expect maybe a little bit more just straight drop back type stuff. Now, another note to make is I won't look at the weather live while I'm doing this, but last I looked, pretty good chance of rain on Saturday night here in the Auburn area. I mean, just the past couple of days, it's been rainy and windy. And so will Hank Brown be able to get a lot of meaningful reps putting the ball in the air? Obviously, Auburn hopes so. This New Mexico defense, also wanted to mention, Hank Brown looked good against Alabama A&M. That was a team that was obviously extremely overmatched. It would probably be pretty concerning if Auburn can't move the ball in some way, shape, or form on Saturday. New Mexico is dead last in college football in yards per play allowed. That's the metric I like to look at. Yards per game can be, sort of skewed sometimes, scoring defense, whatever. But I like to look at SP Plus, ESPN's, advanced analytics, and I like to look at yards per play. They are second to last in the country in SP Plus defense, and they are dead last in yards per play, 8.8 yards per play. The dead last team in college football last year in yards per play allowed 6.9. It's almost a full 2 yards. Now, granted, they've only played 2 games, and they competed in both of those games. They went on the road and competed against a ranked Arizona team. Bronco Mendenhall is now at New Mexico. That's it's a name people will remember from his time at Virginia and his time at BYU. Good coach. I think is going to have them in a good spot moving forward. All of that is to say, Hank Brown should be able to succeed in this game. Our last question here. What do you want to see out of Hank Brown? Obviously, that's something, as you're listening to this and you kind of think about, your game day here on Saturday, what you want to see out of this offense, because and what Auburn wants to see, the coaches can see so much more than we will. An 8-yard out, that's completed or not completed, or even just a check at the line of scrimmage where there's a touchdown on one play. We saw that in week 1, guys. Remember that. Keandre Lambert-Smith was wide open in the end zone. Peyton Thorne threw him the ball, and he comes back to the sideline, and Hugh Freeze he's literally doing this with his hands. I don't know exactly what he was saying, but it looked like he was saying, I'm begging you to make that protection and make that protection call correctly, because he got clobbered when he let go of the ball. Next week against Cal, with way better athletes on the field defensively, the Auburn offensive line struggled. The pre-snap calls were not great. And so the coaches will be, it's a long rambling way of saying the coaches will be able to dissect that stuff. If Hank Brown goes out there and he's 7 of 10 for, 110 yards and a touchdown, they might think his day was really, really good, or they might think his day was, kind of so-so. And we'll see what that looks like moving forward. I would not expect this to be a finished product by Saturday. Again, Auburn shouldn't have a lot of issues in this game, but it raises the question of what can you learn going into Arkansas the next week? Like, if Hank Brown goes and lights the world on fire in this game, again, now you've got the weather as a factor as well in terms of putting the ball in the air. Are you just completely sold on him now going into Arkansas, which is your SEC opener, an extremely important game that Auburn needs to win at home? I'm not entirely sure. At the same time, if you name him the starter in this game and he does fine, you probably don't need to pull him for any sort of reason. I would expect both Hank Brown and Peyton Thorne moving forward. And this is exciting. This is something for Auburn where they did not expect this game to be so intriguing. They're a 4-touchdown favorite as it currently stands over New Mexico on Saturday. Just a couple weeks ago, we were not expecting this to be a game that had a lot of pomp around it. All of a sudden, Hank Brown's going to get a big cheer on Saturday, and Auburn's coaching staff is going to have a lot of dissecting to do in terms of his performance on Saturday. So wanted to just kind of get in the office studio here on Friday, just record a quick video for you guys, talk about the thoughts. If you're driving to the game, maybe a little podcast will get you through. And if you're on the website, again, War Eagle Wake Up was something we did a couple years ago, a little more consistently. Our video content otherwise has been higher, but this segment has been lower. Maybe, if you'd rather watch this instead of College Game Day or what have you, maybe this is something we'll try to put together on Saturday mornings. Definitely leave your feedback. The studio will be set up maybe a little bit better moving forward. Again, I'm not going to bother our video intern. If you guys listened on your podcast feeds of choice, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathan King. If it is game day and you're listening to this, auburnundercover.com, pregame notebook, observations. I'll be watching Peyton Thorne and warmups. Christian Clemente will have his recruiting notebook. Me and Jason Caldwell will be in the stadium. Pregame blitz. That'll be our video feature. We'll go over our keys to the game, what we want to see out of Hank Brown, even more, talking about the quarterbacks a lot, because we haven't done it enough this week. Might as well keep on going. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll talk to y'all soon.